Hello, everyone. I'm Edward Kopp, John Erikel Jr. Foundation Chief Curator of the Menil Drawing Institute. And thank you all for joining us for our program this evening. We're really thrilled to welcome Liliana Porter for an artist talk. Initiated in 2018, the Menil's Art Talk series offers the public the opportunity to hear directly from an artist whose works are included in our permanent collection. And we'd like to thank the Cockrell Family Fund for their generous support of this series. So this evening, you're going to have the pleasure of hearing from multidisciplinary artist Liliana Porter. And in addition to discussing her practice more broadly, Liliana will also speak about a 1974 work, Mural Circular VI, which is currently on view in the exhibition Spatial Awareness, Drawings from the Permanent Collection at the Menil Drawing Institute. After Liliana's presentation, I will join her briefly for a brief discussion, and then there will be time for questions from the audience. And please send your questions at any moment during this program using the following email address, programs@menil.org. And now it's my pleasure to welcome our distinguished speaker this evening, Liliana Porter.
Hi, hello. I'm really happy and to be making this presentation at the Menil Institute, which is a place that I've always respected and I admire very much. And also I am very honored to have a piece part of the collection and grateful to Bernice Rose, who was the donor of the piece.
Well, thank you, Liliana. It's a real pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining us from New York. For starters, I will just say a few words about you and your work very briefly. Liliana was born in Argentina, and since 1964, she has lived in New York, the city where she claims everything is possible. There she was the co-founder of the New York Graphic Workshop. She was also the co-founder and instructor at Studio Cabnitzer, an artist residency near Lucca, Italy. And she's also had teaching positions at universities, including the City University of New York. Liliana has a really expansive practice that has included printmaking, drawing, painting, photography, installation, video, public art, as well as theater. Her oeuvre has been described as an act of knowledge that employs humor and wit as its methodology. She's interested in the possibility of objects, of gestures, of artistic conventions, which she transforms mainly through reconstruction, juxtaposition, and recontextualization. She began showing her work as early as 1959, and since then she's been included in over 450 exhibitions in 40 countries. And recent solo shows have included those at Museo del Barrio in New York City, the Perez Art Museum in Miami, the Galeria Luciano Brito in Sao Paulo, Brazil, Art Omi in Ghent, and also the Museo de Arte Zapopan de Guadalajara, Mexico, Sicardi Gallery in Houston, and also the Gallery Maure Charpentier in Paris. And very notably, in 2017, her work was included in Viva Arte Viva, the 57th Venice Biennale. So now, Liliana, over to you.
Very good. Okay, so I will start the presentation with the first image, which is the work that is in the collection here at the Menil. And it's actually, the photograph is a fragment of an installation. It's a black and white photograph, a silver gelatin print. That is my hand, where I drew with ink a line, but the line is a circle. So the circle is completed when the photograph is installed on the wall, and the circle is completed on pencil. And I am interested in the subject of time and how, a thing that we perceive as a consistent circle is drawn not only in different surfaces, but also in different times, is dislocated, but we perceive it as a continuous reality. Next. And well, here in the next slide is the same idea, the idea of these different times that happen simultaneously. The next one. The next. Wait. And this is the idea of the line. And I like very much the idea that the hand, is from, I think, 73 or 74, that continues in the mat, that probably was, I don't know how many years later. And then when the thing is installed, it continues on the wall. So I like this simultaneity of diverse times. Next. And this one is a work from 2013 that is called 40 Years, where I use a photograph of the photograph that you saw before. So everything is a photograph, the photograph of the mat and that, like, I place my hand on top of the photograph matted. So everything was a photograph. And now what it's interesting to explain how reality goes away, like it's very difficult to apprehend, because now everything is an image, and now time goes by, and we could make another piece if I now put my hand on top of it. Next. Well, this is a self-portrait. Let me see, for I think 73 too, where again I'm drawing a line with ink in my face, and I continue the line on the wall behind me. So there is only one point of view, where the rectangle is perceived as one unit. The moment I will move, the thing will be totally destroyed, and will disappear the sense of continuity of the rectangle. Next. So this photograph is from a project series that I did at the Museum of Modern Art. I think was also in 1973. And this was one of the walls of the installation. And the nails on the wall, the nails and their shadows are printed with silkscreen, photo silkscreen. And then the string the real strings comes from those printed illusionistic nails to the floor, where there are real nails. Besides, the obvious idea of reality and illusion, here I think I became very aware of the importance of the empty background, because the empty background has to do with the idea of you putting things and situations in a place that has no context, that has no is not that is an abstract place in temporal space, and which is something that will be important in the work from there on. So next one is close up, that you can see the real string, and then the nail that seems really very three-dimensional is just a photo silkscreen on the wall, the same as the shadow. And so this image, now we are going back. This is from 1969. Is in Argentina, in the Instituto Torcuato Di Tella, and I was working with shadows, because I was interested in this possibility of creating absences. And for instance, the only real shadow in this photograph is the shadow of the girl, but the shadows on the right and the shadows on the left are painted on the wall. And it was interesting because at the opening was very difficult to you perceive the wall as an empty wall, an empty white wall, and the shadows would be confused, the real and the illusionary ones. And next one. Okay. This is a photograph also from more or less that time. And because I was working also with the archetypical objects, and here is I was interested in the reality of the object and then the drawing of it. Two forms of representation, simultaneous representation. The next one. This is a photo etching I did at the time. Let me see when I say this. It's from 1975. It's a photo etching. I did a series of about 15 photo etchings based on an intervention in a book about Magritte of Susie Gablik. And so in this case, where is the reproduction of the painting of Magritte with the man with the apple, I put a real apple on top of it. And then I did a photograph and then a photo etching. And again, it's interesting how everything right away becomes an image, not only the painting and the apple, but also the shadow of the book. The whole thing becomes an illustration. Next. This is a more recent print. I think it's from, let me see, from 2002. Well, not that recent. It's a woodcut. And again, we feel that the tiger is in the virtual space of the paper, but the scratch is closer to us because it's on top of the paper. It invades our own space. Next one. This is called The Light. It's a painting. It's a work on canvas, and next to it there is a framed silver gelatin print. And more or less at this time, I started with a series that I call Dialogues, which is to confront two figurines or two characters, totally dissimilar, but somehow they communicate. I think the next one is a close-up, the next image. Yeah. And for instance, if you look close, you can see that the shadow of Mickey goes towards, it enters the space of the canvas. And I like very much that possibility of relationships that from different spaces, from different realities. Also, the Christ is a lamp, is a plastic lamp. So there are different impersonations of persons or that we know, even imaginary characters like, let's say, Mickey Mouse, that we all know, and then Christ, that in that case is a lamp, but they seem to relate no matter where they are, in what context, or what's the story behind, or the timeline. No? The next one. Let's see the next one. This is from 2007. It's a digital print, and it's called Dialogue with Duck. And well, again here, you can see, the duck is painted on top of that lamp. And I like very much how, for some reason, these two characters really relate and also again I'm using here that empty space, that space that places the object in a non-place, no, that I think is important. So the next one. Okay, here is another one. This is the dialogue with Mag, I think it's called. I found this Mag that has the drawing of, is painted with this dog, and here we don't see it very well, but he has these eyes and this gaze that is very strong. So when I was doing this piece, I put the cap and I was trying to find which of my figurines will really relate to the gaze of the dog. And it took me a while until I found this figurine of this girl, this sitting girl, and it's amazing how they really relate. And this is a photograph, but also it was an object, like the object itself, the three-dimensional object, I put on a shelf and was also a piece, no? And I like also to go, from the virtual space to the real space. Now we come to a painting that is, this one is more recent. It's called Tuan Tango from 2020. It's a work on canvas, and there is this character, this man sitting there who is trying to untangle a series of strings. I think there is a close-up next. And I think every subject, I think my work I call situations, because I think they are not, they don't have a narrative that starts and finishes. It's a situation like in the middle of life, where you can, it's an open situation where you can really use as a metaphor of different things. You can really finish the narrative yourself, no? But to me, the idea of untangling a string that is real, but it's also inside the virtual space, has to do also with how our memory works, because in our memory, there is not a linear, logical way where things happen, but they are all, it seems that all our memories and perceptions from the past and from the present are simultaneous. No? The next one. The Traveler. The Traveler is a subject that I really did many times in etchings, drawings, installations, and photographs. This one also is a photograph, but also was a real thing on top of a base. And is the traveler that is supposed to arrive to that house, but for him to get there, he has to really have faith that he has to ignore the fact that there is like a limit, and that you can feel that is a limit, or you can enter and go to the house. I think it depends on the attitude of the traveler. I think this one will arrive. Next one. This is a postcard of a postcard that reproduces a painting of Magritte, Le Clairvoyance, and there is this man that is looking at this egg. But the incredible thing is that I put a marble egg next to the postcard, and for some reason he really, if you look at the work, he's looking at the one that I put. He's looking beyond his space to our space. The next one. This is Cibachrome. It's a Cibachrome I did in 99, Girl with Rubber Dog. And this Cibachrome, I think, is one of the first color photographs I did. And when I did the photograph, if you would take that rubber dog, which is three-dimensional, away, under it, there is another image. Because when I did the photograph, she was looking at another object that was photographed, but I didn't like it. So what I did is I glue the head of the dog there, which I like because it's in a totally absurd place and it doesn't go with the perspective of the virtual space. But what happened is that there is a shadow, and the printed shadow was the shadow of the object that is underneath. But it's very magical that the real object makes a printed shadow. So something happens to this work that makes the gaze of the girl that looks a little amazed just justifiable, no? Because she's probably thinking, what is this? Where is this dog? Or how come the shadow is in my space? So the next one, this is called Reconstruction Penwing from 2007, and this is the first of a series of reconstructions that I did, about, I think, 30 reconstructions, because I like very much this idea of reversing time. So first you see the evidence in the photograph of the broken object, and then you see the object that is intact and perfect in our space. So that possibility of reversing time, of course, it appeals very much to me. And it also serves as a metaphor of many desires. No? And next one. Well, this is, now I see, sort of difficult to see. It's called Situation with Scribble from 2020. And it's a big painting that has different things going on, unrelated things, but on the same non-space. Like, for instance, on top of it, on the left, there is a very tiny traveler, and there is a drawing that goes all around of the path where the traveler is going, and it's difficult to see because the lines are very small and very thin. And then on the right, there is the man on top of this base, like it's a square wooden base, making a drawing, a drawing that has totally a different feeling of the way of the traveler, because it's a very fast drawing and it has all this energy. No? Then underneath, on the left side, there is a figurine with a bucket that is the one that threw that splash of black paint, which is again another totally different gesture. No? And then on the right, there is a collage of an oil painting I have done, many months or maybe years before I finished this painting. That is a triangle. No, it has a lot of texture, and the triangle is drawn with the back of the brush, and then on the right it continues with the sphere and the cube made with charcoal. Then underneath that, there is again another how do you say, the ram, like a splash of white paint that this other figurine is letting go, no? And the paint is always it looks like it's more than the possibility of the bucket that he's holding to hold. And then on the bottom left, there is a small car that is trying to go somewhere and is having doubts, and you see the marks of the wheels, going and coming, and also has a different energy. But all this are happening in a simultaneous way. And well, that's one of the subjects that keep coming in my work. So let's see the next. Well, this is from this one from 2015, but actually I did this piece in different years, in different configurations with different figurines, and is somebody looking at the point. The point is drawn on the wall, no? Sometimes I did it like it's looking at the little jewel or a little sphere or something like that. But the idea is like, it's an absurd idea, but it's somehow an illustration of eternity, no? That he's looking at that forever, and it's like an impossibility because it's like a fragment of eternity, and of course eternity by definition doesn't have fragments, no? But well, and so this is an object, and let's see the next one. It's a drawing. Is called the correction. Also with this subject I did also etchings and different drawings and also paintings. And it's a scribble. It starts with a scribble. A scribble is something that is always correct by definition, no? The concept of the scribble. So to correct a scribble is not only absurd, but also is presumptuous, no? But at the same time, I think that it has to do, it could be a metaphor of our search for the explanation of things, that we keep coming with different theories, and every time all those corrections are always mistakes somehow, no? Or they are presumptuous because it looks like we will never really know what the answer is, no? So the next one, this is also a drawing made in different papers. It's made with acrylic, with black acrylic, and always, the circle is supposed to be the metaphor of perfection, no? So that's why it's called the attempt, because like if you see the next image, we can see a close-up of the man who is the one responsible of making that big circle and trying to find perfection. But of course it looks really a little far from it, but at the same time it gives us some hope, the possibility of continuous to try, no? Let's see the next. This is an installation. I did a series called Forced Labor, that were always very small characters trying to accomplish tasks that were much superior to their possibilities. So here on the right, you see the small person trying to untangle this mess of strings and ropes, and we can see that it's going to take him a while to arrive to his goal, no? And let's see the next one. This is a big installation called The Men with the Axe, which is something also I did in several places, but this photograph is from 2017 from the Venice Biennale. And is this figurine that we see here is very small. It's like probably 3 inches high. And the biggest thing that you see at the end is a piano upside down, because the man with the axe is sort of is beginning to break, or he just broke everything that you can see. But this work, I feel that is a kind of a resume of all my work, because if you would have a chance to see close, there are all the subjects that interest me, the dialogues, the person fixing something, the traveler, also objects I use over and over, like the clocks and the different situations, like with that have to do also with forced labor, and then books and mirrors and reflections, and it's a very complex work, but and it looks like a bit this distraction, but at the same time have many things that are the opposite. Somebody very tiny who is sweeping the floor, somebody fixing a little thing, painting something that broke. So it has all that contradiction of macro and mini uh, things to discover, while the viewer has to go through, it creates in a way their own narrative according to how you see the work. Hmm? Let's see the next one. It's a photograph. Well, it's again now it's obvious what I did. It's an accumulation of figurines and characters totally unrelated, coming from different times, different realities, even physically totally different, like has nothing to do Elvis Presley with the son of Kennedy, with the Chinese dancer, or the Spanish torero, whatever, the Nazi there, the dog, the dancers, Mickey Mouse, imaginary characters with reproductions of real things like the dog or whatever, no, but they occupy the same space, and they occupy the same time somehow. So I'm trying to break up the idea of the logic of time, of the the idea of the consistency of one thing after the other, no? And also of to put all these characters in, again, a space that has no place, that has no uh, ear, no geography, that is an abstract, that in a way unites all the possibility of all times in all places. And the next one, I think, is the last image, is called The Gardener. And again, it's a subject that I repeat a lot, because I like very much this idea that the gardener doesn't seem to care that his garden is in a broken plate, but he's still relating with those flowers, and he's still with um, have seen pouring the water, and taking care of the flowers in this broke. I think it's a romantic work that has is a hopeful kind of work, and it's good to finish this presentation with that image.
Thank you so much, Liliana. What a wonderful talk. And what strikes me is your sense for the poetry of objects, your sense of the absurd, the unlikely, and the amazing playfulness with which you approach these objects. And I wanted to start with a simple question that many audience members may wonder. Where do you find these objects? How do you collect them? And do you have a big collection?
Yeah, I have a big. It's not that I wanted to collect, but the collection created by itself. But I find them in flea markets, Also, it's interesting, but sometimes in airports, but especially in flea markets, you find all these old things because in general they are not from our time, but a little retro, no? From
Mhm.
the 50s or something like that.
And and I wonder, I mean, with these particular pieces, the last that we saw in your presentations, I mean, do you have a process? I mean, how do you start with one figure and you find it intriguing and then you make a connection with another, or is it more like even in the studio you have these things on the table and they start to play, and then in the process of making you create the work?
Yeah, I think it's more like that because by now I really have like what I call the cast, no?
The cast, yeah.
Yeah, in some of they didn't work yet. Some are waiting, looking at me and saying so sometimes you want, let's say you want to make like one of the last photographs I show with a group, and it's interesting to start looking and because like it's like working with somebody else, no, because they already, I don't paint them or I don't do anything to the objects, so they all come with their own history. They are already loaded with meaning,
Mhm.
and so I just have to relate to them and put them in situations that have to do with probably what I want to see or the question I am asking, no?
And also, I mean, to ask you, what's striking is the range of media you use, but also what's striking is that you find continuities with between them or between some of them, and we'll get back to that when we look back at your early wall drawings. But I wanted to ask you, let's say, assuming you have an idea, how will you select a particular medium? I mean, does it go this way, or will you when
Eh,
it?
Always I go from the idea to the technique. It starts with the idea, and every idea has a better solution. So like some ideas are solved much better in video, or some are better if it's a drawing, or some need to have a bigger size of, like, but always it's not that I start with the technique and from the technique I find the idea, no? And like for instance, photography led me to video because I was doing photographs, and then one day I have a toy which he plays the cymbals,
Mhm,
and when he stops playing the cymbals, the silence is what I was interested. But I realized that you cannot convey that silence without showing the noise first. So that led me to my first video, because I realized I needed time. I needed to show all that. And also, like for instance, one thing, every video has a lot of interesting aspects. Like for instance, I discovered with video that you have the viewer sort of trapped, because if you go to an exhibition and see a painting, you can look a second and continue walking. But once you are sitting there, it's like for some reason you can control how long do you want the viewer to see an image, no? So all those aspects are important when you are thinking of the work.
what strikes me when I look at the full range of your work is you have a very keen understanding of space as something that can be defined or that you may leave for the viewer to define. And I wonder if you've been, over the course of your career, informed by the work of others, things where, like artists who have thought deeply about the issue of space.
Issues of space. Well, let's see about space. For instance, for me, an artist that for me is very important is Morandi, because Morandi has a silence that nobody else has. No? And so I think is a big influence. The other one is the humor I find in many works of Liechtenstein, that I think are very intelligent. No? But many of my works, or maybe my inspiration, is more maybe on literature than on the visual arts.
Fascinating. Thank you. So we're getting quite a number of questions, and I wanted to start with some questions around your early war drawings. So if we could have the first slide of the PowerPoint, that would be very useful. Thank you. And here I have two questions from Saskia Verlaan, who curated this exhibition and was our predoctoral fellow last year. And her first question was, could you please explain the significance of the hand in Mural Circular and other works from that series? The works always feature line over hands, not any other body parts, but the hands always as a passive surface for the line rather than the active agent that makes it.
Yeah. Let's see, I have to think. The hand, well, the hand is the one that draws. The hand is like a face. The hand and the face, I think, I have to think really, but I think it's a very, first, it's familiar. It's a familiar part, a familiar image. And then also because the hand draws and at the same time is drawn. I like that, no? And the drawing also is an extension of the hand. So I think probably that's why I chose the hand. No, the hand, I think. At the same time, I realized it had to be my hand. I wouldn't have done it with somebody else's hand. So probably it has to do with a personal mark, to because once I did a series with the hand that is a series of 6 photographs, and I drew a little square, and it looks in the different photographs that the hand is getting into a virtual space and holding that square. And I think that it has to do with that, with the hand that draws, but at the same time is the one that is able to enter the virtual space and be also the subject. Something like that.
Beautiful, thank you. And I should also say that this particular work comes with instructions. We had to draw a circle in graphite of 2 meters in diameter. And then it was up to us to decide where the hand would be around that circle.
Right.
And so it's interesting that you left some room for interpretation or for the people who install the work to, go for it. And
because in this case, it really didn't matter in which place is located, is placed, and so it would have been more difficult to make something precise when it doesn't need it. No. For instance, I think it's precise to say that I would like the drawing of the circle to mimic somehow the texture of the drawing on inside the photograph. No, so you see, what I in general do is mark first the circle and then draw it by hand. So it has to be really like it's not a perfect circle, a mechanical one, but you can tell that somebody drew it. No, has the human touch.
Human imperfection.
Yes.
But with humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so another question was, what was the genesis of the series of line on hands, and why did you decide to return to that subject some 40 years later in a series of photographs? And we showed an example which is a little further down in the presentation.
Here. Yeah.
Yes, this one.
That one, right? Because I love, because I play so much with the subject of time, and this is my hand 40 years later, no? In the hand is sort of joining that moment in that line, no? So the two hands happen at the same time, even if they are 40 years apart, no? Yes. What other thing I have to answer?
Well, the genesis of the series and
Ah,
why did you come? How
because
did
because yeah, let me think. Yes, because I started. I think one of the first one was that I drew in my hand, um, with the right hand, and on the left side I drew the, how do you say, hatch drawing. I all the shadows and everything in the hand. I drew it with ink, in the crosshatch. That's what it's called. And I like so much the idea that a drawing is on top of the model. Like in general, the object is a model and the drawing is on a flat surface. But the drawing in itself, in a three-dimensional hand, I found, to break the logic of things, no? So I think that's why the idea of the hands started, the hands that draw and the hand that is being drawn. And also because it's a way of, I think the hand belong is not, it's a photograph of a hand, it's not a drawing of a hand. So it has to do with the reality of it, with the idea that at one point is human, real, alive, no?
Excellent, thank you. There's another question, and it is the following. Since your earliest career, it looks like you've had an important relationship with Italy. Some photographs of artworks have been taken in Lucca, for example, and your first wall drawing in screen print was executed in a gallery in Milan. Can you tell us more about your Italian contacts in the early 70s?
Yeah, well, because I used to spend summers in Italy, um, a long time ago. And so I started to show there, and of course I started to do some works there. So I have some photographs that belong, that I photographed over there. I used to have a house there, and so a huge contact with Italy was in Lucca. We had I was married with Luis Kamnitzer, and we had a school there in a studio, and we spent many months in Italy. So that's why there is that Italian uh, part of my work and my life.
Here's another question. Uh, can you please speak to working as a female artist in the late 1960s and 70s? Who were the artists that had an impact on your working as a young artist in New York during those years?
Well, especially the pop artists, and I was because I came in 1964. So, I saw the first exhibitions at Castelli Gallery uptown of Oldenburg and Liechtenstein and Warhol, and was it was very impressive, because also um, I was, how do you say, experiencing the city, for me, New York, as a new place, at the same time as the art that was coming. So it was very consistent, and it was very coherent. That pop art with going to the supermarket. No, that for me was incredible. The design of the thing, the color. The difference between my experience in Buenos Aires. So well, so yeah, the pop artists were really the first artists I was very impressed, no, with, and the ones I saw first. But then there were many other artists I was um, that for me were important, but maybe later, no, like Ana Mendieta and many. I don't know now. I will not name some very important ones because I will forget.
There's a question about, well, actually, before I ask one question from the audience, I had one of my own, and you just mentioned Argentina, and I'm thinking, um, I mean, how present is Argentina in your work over these decades after, 64, being in New York? Um,
Well, it's very present because, for instance, all the things you experience in your childhood are the ones that mark you forever. So, for instance, I was, as you can see, speak English with an accent, and everything. All your first experience are the ones that really define you, and then the rest are things that happen after, and so they enrich your own experiences, but I think the first ones are the ones that really mark you. Like, for instance, you will always, the archetype of something will be the first one you saw. So you will compare the Argentinian apple, which is the archetype for me, to the other, So that in that sense, you always are, or it could be also something that is a wish. No, uh, I am interested in keeping, all that the Argentinian experience because it was positive for me. No, so that's my point of reference, and but I'm here, since 64 is a long time, but still Argentina. I am Argentinian totally.
and New York is still a realm of possibilities.
Right, totally. Yeah. And New York is a perfect place because it changes all the time, no? And so it has to do with my work. It has to do with the perception of reality and the perception of time, no?
And I think there's time for one last question, and there's one from the audience about your work, your recent work, Correction. So if we could bring it up on the screen, it's your Scribble, right?
Yes. They have to find it.
Yes, and I might as well start with the question. Here it is. Thank you.
Yes.
Um, so your recent work, Correction, is about the control of the form and the immediacy of scribbling. Many of your works have an immediate simplicity and look like perfect shots of great movies. But is it actually so? Did you first practice, uh, you know, include a lot of corrections, discards, and pentimenti? How has it changed over time?
No, no. The corrections are always spontaneous, and because, like I said before, a scribble is never wrong. As the definition and the thing is always consistent. No, it's difficult to make a wrong scribble. Well, unless you do something that is not a scribble, but a scribble is a fast drawing without really control, or without, it looks like without purpose really. And so the correction is an impossibility because there is no archetype of a scribble, or if there is, it's impossible to correct. It's perfect.
Yes, no, it's hard to break that logic. I know you like to break logics sometimes, break them
Yeah,
open,
because
and
at the same time, it's interesting that something that seemed so without order, no, is could be perfect. It's something to think.
well, it's a nice thing to end on. But Liliana, thank you so much for this very enlightening and generous presentation. And I'm so glad we could have this conversation. I remember I was one of the lucky ones at the Venice Biennale in 2017, seeing your work and being amazed by this affectionate view of mankind, understanding its complexities and contradictions, and you embraced it all with a great poetry and an amazing sense of line. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I love what you just told me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liliana. And I'd like to thank our audience also for joining us. Thank you so much. And I'd like to remind everyone that Spatial Awareness is currently on view at the Drawing Institute and through March 13th. And the next artist talk will be Kate Shepherd, and she will talk in person at the Drawing Institute, even though the program will be recorded and made accessible online. And this will be on February 17th at 7 p.m. And as always, further information on our programs is available online on our website at www.menil.org. And thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.